Right across. Go on. Right in, right in.
On this week's travel show.
Oh, not cut out for the seafaring life.
I take the tiller of a First World War boat that's still on the water. Our trip star, Ben Zan, scoots around Italy's fashion capital, Milan.
Prada and Louis Vuitton all in one place. I'm starting to think this is a bit classier than I am.
And Thailand's Festival of Light shines bright this month. In 2014, the world began 4 years of commemorations for the 100th anniversary of the First World War. The conflict raged from 1914 to 1918, resulting in 17 million deaths and redrawing the map of Europe. Today, the war is remembered for its brutal trench warfare and marked by the endless graves that stretch across Flanders fields and the Somme.
But there was another pivotal part of the conflict that today is often overlooked. It was the war being waged out on the high seas.
The British and German naval forces battled for control of the North Sea, the conduit needed to bring vital supplies to both nations.
People, of course, know a great deal about the war in the trenches, but the fact that we're an island nation, the fact that we had to bring all our supplies by sea, is something which people tend to forget. But in 1916-17, the U-boat war started, and that was really serious. And over a period of time, it got to the point where the U-boats were sinking so many ships that it's said that we were within 6 weeks of starvation.
Despite heavy losses, the Royal Navy fended off the U-boat offensives, and Britain survived to continue the fight. 100 years on, Martin Highton would like to see the significance of these sea battles better understood.
We're a maritime nation. We often forget that. So the fact that so much was going on at sea that people at first don't know about is something which I think they should learn about and remember that alongside the horrors of the trenches.
This year has seen several events commemorating the Sea War, including the opening to the public of the HMS Caroline, the last remaining ship from the 1916 Battle of Jutland, the biggest naval battle of the First World War. But tourists can find other vestiges of the maritime conflict if they're prepared to seek them out. I've come to Essex and the picturesque marina at Walton-on-the-Naze.
It may be very peaceful today, but this was once the most fortified stretch of the British coast. And during the First World War, this whole area was a hive of activity. Hello there, you must be Brian.
I am. Good morning, Krista. All right, welcome aboard. 1 foot on there and in, yes?
Fantastic.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Welcome aboard. Okay.
So this is a lifeboat?
Yes, it's the world's oldest motorised lifeboat, and for which this boat has done a total of about 227 rescues during its service.
Wow, that's a lot of people who owe their lives to this boat.
A lot of people. Clear!
The lifeboat was built in 1900, and it's now used to take tourists like me out for a spin on the River Twizzle and the Walton Channel, which runs into the North Sea. It's a perfect day to be out on the water, and flat enough that Brian even allows me to take a turn at the tiller.
Hold that, Zeta.
Okay.
Hook it gently to me.
Okay.
The boat will go over that way. Watch the way it goes.
Oh, look at that!
Woman in control.
Always.
Alright. That's it. Straighten up.
Oops,
Always straighten up a
right.
little bit before you're actually there.
Alright.
So,
that's good. It's not too difficult to get the hang of this, if only you know the difference between port and starboard.
But of course, this vessel was built for the most treacherous of conditions, which it experienced throughout the First World War.
In those times there weren't so many navigational aids, and often lots of boats would go adrift onto the sands, then the crews had to be rescued.
The most famous of the lifeboat's rescues took place on the night of 29th December 1917, when the SS Peregrine, a passenger ship filled with refugees from Belgium, ran aground in a force 9 gale.
There was 59 passengers on board and 33 crew, and the rescue took a number of hours. It was a very difficult rescue. The SS Peregrine actually broke into two onto long sands, and the crew had actually been tied to the part of the ship to hold them on board.
After several hours and 2 trips, all on board were rescued, including the 2 ship's cats.
So if it weren't for this boat?
If it weren't for this boat, then the chances are all the passengers and crew would have been drowned.
This 116-year-old lifeboat has been meticulously restored by a dedicated group of volunteers, and money from tourist trips like this one helps to keep her running. But south of here, on the dockside at Chatham in North Kent, there's another World War I veteran that's a rather bigger job to keep afloat.
This is the HMS President. It was built in 1917 to sink German U-boats, and it was given a rather flashy paint job.
This is what's known as a dazzle ship. It was a measure adopted by the British Admiralty to camouflage vessels with complex patterns and shapes in order to protect them from the torpedoes of German U-boats.
To use the torpedo, they had to know in which direction the ship was going and at what speed. Painting the ship with dazzle made that more difficult to calculate, made it extremely difficult to calculate.
The current dazzle is quite different from the original. It was a design created in 2014 by German artist Tobias Rehberger.
And then down to this beautiful wooden deck here, look.
But many other parts of the ship have been kept very much as they were when it was built 99 years ago.
The ammunition would come up through this passway.
Shells would be just passed
Shells would be passed through under the instructions from the bridge. That's a rather ancient sound system as well. It's lovely, isn't it?
It's all still here, it's incredible.
And this used to be the ship's hospital.
She certainly is a grand old girl still, but almost 100 years of wear and tear have taken their toll on the ship's hull.
Okay, we're going down to the lowest deck now.
That's good and dark.
Under the waterline. And here are the ribs of the ship underneath the waterline, which we keep very carefully under surveillance.
In some parts, the constant friction of water has worn the hull down to as little as 2 millimetres, and there are concerns the ship could begin taking on water in a matter of months.
6.6 millimetres away from the water.
Yes.
Right there.
The owners have attempted to find modern uses for the vessel, converting spaces for events from weddings to music concerts and even a fashion show. But maintaining her has proved too costly. All hopes are resting on an application for public funds to help the restoration, which will be decided later this year.
There's a phrase that comes up very often when people have talked about being in conflict and regretting it. And they say a thing like, lessons were learned. Well, I'd like the ship to be the place where we remembered what lessons we learned.
After a day of seeing these vessels up close, I find it extraordinary that around 100 years after they were pressed into service in the First World War, they are still available to be experienced. And while it will take a good dose of luck and plenty of willing volunteers, perhaps they will still be afloat for their next centenary. Next up, we're off to northern Spain, where our thirsty explorer's developing a taste for Catalan cocktails.
San Sebastian, in Spain's Basque Country, has long been renowned for its culinary imagination and traditional cider production. But more recently, the seaside city has adopted Spain's drink of choice, the gin and tonic. So I enlisted the help of some locals to see if I could find out why this drink had become so popular.
You see, this is where the love is. In any other place in the world, you order for a gin and tonic, I bet you they won't go like touching the, you know, when you're gonna put your lips. It's important.
Ellie explained the Basque have their own word for love when referring to food and drink. Mimo. So it makes sense that locals wound up with a weakness for a drink that aids in digestion, propelling the gin tonic, as it's called in Spain, from a sloppily poured mixture to a perfected ritual.
La ginebra tiene que estar natural, de 18 a 20 grados de temperatura, para que la ginebra suelte las aromas. Y la tónica tiene que estar de 3 a 5 grados de temperatura para que mantenga el carbónico.
Joaquin preferred a classic gin tonic, but more modern bartenders like to experiment with garnishes such as grapes and rose petals to match the gin's flavor profile.
Chin chin. Chin chin. It seems like we have over 20 kinds of gin to choose from right now, and I'm not even gonna pretend to know what to do with that.
But it's not just about the gin. The devil's in the excessive consideration of temperature, carefully curled citrus, and quality tonic poured slowly into a huge Cabernet glass filled with massive ice rocks.
Still to come on the travel show.
From Florida's art scene to Australia's festival scene, we'll be bringing you our global guide to this month's top events. Our trip star Ben's in Milan with just a smartphone and a slender budget.
Unlimited food?
Yeah.
How much will it cost me for unlimited food all night?
The Travel Show, your essential guide wherever you're heading.
Hello, this is my global guide, destination highlights, insider buzz, and top tips on where to go and when to go. I'm Michelle Yana Chan. In Lyon, the Festival of Lights begins December 8th for 3 days, drawing millions of visitors to see the creations of designers, artists, architects, videographers and lighting engineers. The festival transforms the city, highlighting its architectural heritage, streets, squares and parks. The switch is flicked on at 8 p.m. and off at midnight. Light is also being revered in Thailand during the Loy Krathong festival, but it will take on a different feel this year, just over a month after the death of the king. Perhaps that might make this festival even more meaningful. Head to the ancient capitals of Sukhothai or Ayutthaya. They'll be marking the festival on and around November 15th. In Florida, in the USA, Art Basel Miami Beach takes place December 1st through 4th, a must-stop on the global art circuit for the world's leading gallerists, collectors, artists and art fans. Galleries will be showcasing works by thousands of 20th and 21st century artists. There'll also be talks on producing, collecting and exhibiting, as well as conversations with critics, curators and museum directors. Many events are open to the public, including salons, studio visits, installations and video art at nearby Collins Park and Soundscape Park. Staying in the US, also on the East Coast, Washington, D.C. is drawing crowds to the long-awaited Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture. Designed by David Ajay, the museum sits on the National Mall beside the Washington Monument. It's not only an institution of artifacts, but also a performance venue with upcoming book readings and conversations with prominent African Americans. In Austria, the Altitude Festival is moving its dates forward from its usual slot in springtime to December to kick off the winter season. Starting December 11th, the week-long comedy festival presents a raucous mix of top stand-ups, bands and skiing, weather permitting. The finale is a spectacular festival of light in Mayhofen with free Glühwein on tap. To another dazzling event, Christmas Lights Across Canada begins December 1st, illuminating the capitals of all the provinces and territories with some of the best displays in Ottawa, lighting up the Parliament buildings, national museums and landmarks. You should also wrap up for Japan's Chichibu Festival on December 2nd and 3rd. A small town near Tokyo hosts a Yomatsuri, or night festival, dating back more than 300 years. Alternatively, choose the balmier climes at this time of year down under. For good times on the beach, head to the Festival of the Sun in the Australian coastal town of Port Macquarie, about halfway between Sydney and Brisbane. It's been called the best of the boutique music festivals, with some great bands including Gang of Youths, Seth Century and Dune Rats playing December 9th and 10th. That's my global guide this month. Let me know what's happening in the place where you live or where you love. We're on email and across social media. Until next time, happy traveling.
And finally this week, our Trip Star Challenge. We've been all over the world using insider tips that you've sent us via social media. You've shown us a side to cities like Bangkok and Kolkata that we'd never have seen without your amazing recommendations. This week, Ben faces yet another tough challenge in one of Europe's most elegant cities.
Milan, Italy's fashion capital. It's quite glamorous here, and also very expensive.
But what if you just rocked up on a budget airline with nothing but a smartphone, a rucksack, and some loose change in your pocket?
Well, I'm putting all my faith in social media. I'll rely on your replies to get me around all the sites here for as little as possible. I like starting off with a bird's eye view. It gives me some context.
Whoa, that's cool. So this is like the stairway to heaven.
The Duomo is a magnet for most first-timers, as it dominates the central square. It's not too expensive either.
So this is the only cathedral in the world where you can walk on the roof. And I'm doing it right now. Isn't that cool?
But what I need is a way to get around all the cheap treats as quickly as I possibly can. This is Mauro. Sadly, he comes with a price tag.
So it might not be the cheapest thing to do whilst you're here, but riding the Vespa around the city is probably the coolest thing you can do.
It's cheating, yes, but in my defense, I'm getting to see all of the very best free sites, so it works out. Kind of. And I'm lucky. On the first Sunday of every month, access to state museums is completely free of charge.
That was fun.
And that gives you access to some world-famous works.
Painted everything with attention for the particulars. Look at the faces. Every single man of this paint, he is thinking or saying something definitive. So almost all of them are very scared about that. And they are saying, no, it's not me, it's not me. Who is going to kill you? Who is going to do that?
There's a lot of mosquitoes. Oh, there you go. Protected. There we go. She's supposedly here somewhere. I think that might be her. Hey!
Hi, Ben.
I'm so far away. Nice to meet you, Paola. How's it going?
Hi, how are you?
I'm very good,
Welcome
thank you.
in Milan.
How do we say hello in Italy? Is that?
Ciao, benvenuto. Ciao.
And the kiss, 2 kisses?
Yeah, 2 kisses. So this is a typical aperitivo. Yeah.
It's very colourful, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a really typical thing you have to do here in Milan.
Okay.
We start at 6 p.m. and we go on for all the night, and you can eat what you want.
Unlimited food?
Yeah.
How much will it cost me for unlimited food all night?
Unlimited food is free. One drink, it goes from 7 euros to 10 euros here in Milan.
I'm that type of guy who just takes all the chicken from the rice. Gotta take the expensive bits when you're on a budget.
Aperitivo is good.
And before we part for the night, Paola wants to take me to one last place for some budget fun, just as the heavens open.
Okay, let's go.
Whoa. I thought we were in Milan. It's meant to be sunny. This is...
It's like Hanoi.
Ah. Oh, it's so wet. It's so wet. Is that a taxi? There's a taxi. Oh no, someone else has got it. My back is getting so wet. Taxi, stop. It's got someone in it, maybe. Oh. It's a miracle. It's a miracle.
Grazie.
We made it. La 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 la.
So Ben, this is the famous Balera dell'Ortica, where you can dance, where you can have a good evening, staying with your friends, drink some beer, you can play bowls, you can meet everyone.
Right there. You don't mess around when you play bowls. These guys are serious.
Piera, please, can we join you? Possiamo giocare con lei? Go Ben, go Ben, go Ben.
She's chanting my name. Amazing. Okay, here we go. Whoa.
No, it's wrong. I don't know. It was
Too hard.
Too hard.
Too hard. I'm losing the crowd a bit here, but... All right, got to impress these guys. Want to make some new friends. Here we go. Piano. Oh, I don't know what that means. Okay. Piano. Oh, she said no. I hit it. Oh my God. Oh, amazing. Is that good? Awesome. Look at that. I'm actually a pro. I've played before.
Arrivederci.
Amazing. What a nice place this is. It was a bit of a rainy day, a bit of a difficult day at times, but it was also awesome and very friendly. And I ate nice food. I saw a beautiful city, so it's all good.
Well, that's all we've got time for on this week's show, but coming up next week... Henry's in southern Poland, meeting the fortune hunters, hoping to find a lost treasure trove that's been a mystery for decades.
Just take a look at these tracks. Who knows what's underneath that rubble?
So do join us then if you can. And in the meantime, don't forget you can catch up with us while we're out on the road in real time by signing up to our social media feeds. Details are on the screen now. But for now, from me, Crystal Larwood, and the rest of the Travel Show team here on the HMS President, it's goodbye.